I'm not talking about money for Greenland yet. I might talk about that. But right now, we are going to do something on Greenland, whether they like it or not, because if we don't do it, Russia or China will take over Greenland, and we're not going to have Russia or China as a neighbor. I would like to make a deal, the easy way, but if we don't do it the easy way, we're going to do it the hard way.
Everyone laughed when Donald Trump said he wanted to buy Greenland. The Danish Prime Minister called it absurd. Cable news turned it into a joke. Social media had a field day. Late-night hosts made it the punchline for weeks. Trump's idea seemed like the most ridiculous thing anyone had heard in years. But here's what almost nobody asked. What if he was actually right? Not about the method, not about the language, but about the core strategic concern underneath it all. What if Trump was pointing to something real that everyone else was ignoring? Because here's the thing. While the world was laughing, defense analysts weren't laughing. Intelligence officials weren't laughing. Military planners who spend their careers thinking about Arctic security weren't laughing. They were paying attention. Some of them were quietly saying, "It's about time someone said this out loud." The Arctic is melting. Not slowly, not theoretically. Right now. And as the ice disappears, something else appears. Shipping routes that didn't exist before. Resources that were locked under ice for millennia, and military access to a region that three major powers suddenly care about desperately. Greenland sits in the middle of all of it. And Trump saw what most people missed. The United States was losing its grip on the most strategically important island on Earth. Let's be clear about what Trump actually said in August 2019. He didn't just wake up one morning and decide to buy an island. He was responding to briefings, intelligence assessments, military reports about what Russia and China were doing in the Arctic, reports that most of the public never saw. And his conclusion was simple. If Greenland matters this much, and if we're about to lose access to it, we need to do something dramatic. The reaction was instant mockery. But Trump doubled down. He said Greenland was strategically interesting. He said it was important for the United States. He said it wasn't about real estate, it was about national security. And then Denmark rejected the idea. Trump canceled a state visit, and the entire episode became a punchline. Everyone moved on. Except the people who actually work on Arctic strategy. They didn't move on. Because they knew Trump had just said out loud what they'd been warning about in classified briefings for years. Thule Air Base. Most Americans have never heard of it, but Trump knew about it. It's been in Greenland since 1951. It tracks ballistic missiles over the North Pole. It monitors Russian submarine activity. It hosts early warning radar systems that protect the entire continental United States. Lose Greenland, and you lose Thule. Lose Thule, and you lose coverage of an entire theater of potential conflict. Trump understood this, and he understood something else. That base sits on territory that might not stay aligned with the United States much longer. Here's what was happening while Trump was being mocked. Russia was reopening Cold War-era military bases across its Arctic frontier. Murmansk, Tiksi, Nagurskoye, Alexandra Land. New air bases, new radar, new coastal defense systems, new submarine pens. Moscow deployed more icebreakers than every other country combined. And Russian bombers started flying Arctic patrol routes they hadn't flown since the Soviet Union collapsed. Trump was getting briefings on this. He was seeing satellite images of Russian military buildups. He was hearing from generals about what this meant for American security. And he was watching China make its move too. China published a white paper calling itself a near-Arctic state. Think about how bold that is. China is nowhere near the Arctic Circle, but Beijing declared itself a stakeholder in Arctic governance anyway. It wasn't symbolic, it was a claim, and Trump recognized it for what it was, a challenge. China started investing heavily in Greenland's rare earth mines. These minerals are essential for everything from smartphones to fighter jets to missile systems. Greenland has some of the largest deposits on Earth. And China was becoming Greenland's biggest investor, its primary economic partner, its future lifeline. Trump saw this happening and understood the implications. If Greenland becomes economically dependent on China, what happens to American access? What happens to Thule? Beijing was also funding infrastructure projects across the Arctic, Iceland, Norway, Svalbard, and it was talking about the Polar Silk Road, a new trade route over the top of the world that would bypass U.S. controlled shipping lanes entirely. Trump grasped what this meant. China was positioning itself for a future where it didn't need American permission to move goods around the world. And then there's Greenland itself. The island has been moving toward independence for 20 years. It controls its own domestic policy now. It negotiates some of its own trade deals. Full independence isn't a question of if anymore, it's when. And when it happens, Greenland will need money, security, and international recognition immediately. Trump understood the math. Greenland goes independent. It needs economic support. China offers billions in infrastructure investment with no political strings attached. The United States offers what? A military base that many Greenlanders see as a colonial relic and not much else. Who do you think Greenland chooses? So Trump proposed something radical. Actually pay for Greenland. Make it a formal transaction. Offer Denmark and Greenland enough money that it becomes a real negotiation. Guarantee Greenland's economic future while securing American strategic interests permanently. Was it crude? Yes. Was it politically tone-deaf? Absolutely. But was the strategic logic sound? That's the question nobody wanted to ask. Because the alternative is what? Hope that Greenland stays friendly after independence? Hope that China doesn't become its primary economic partner? Hope that Russia doesn't offer security guarantees? Hope isn't a strategy, and Trump knew it. The language Trump used sounded like something from the 1800s. Purchasing territory, manifest destiny, imperialism. It offended Denmark. It created diplomatic chaos. European allies were furious. But strip away the presentation and look at what Trump was actually trying to solve. How do you maintain critical defense infrastructure on territory that's about to realign its international partnerships? How do you compete with China's economic power in a region where you've invested almost nothing? How do you secure access before you lose it? Those are legitimate questions, and Trump was the only person asking them publicly. After Trump left office, did Arctic policy change? No, it intensified. The Biden administration released a comprehensive Arctic strategy in 2022. More icebreakers, more Coast Guard presence, more infrastructure investment, deeper coordination with Nordic allies. The language was more diplomatic. The approach was more conventional. But the priorities? Identical to what Trump had been pushing. Secure Greenland, counter China, match Russia, maintain access. NATO started running major Arctic exercises. Finland and Sweden joined the alliance, bringing serious northern capabilities. The Pentagon increased Arctic funding. New submarines, new aircraft, new bases. Everything Trump said needed to happen started happening, just with better PR. And here's what really matters. None of the strategic concerns Trump raised went away. Russia still has 40 icebreakers to America's 2. China is still investing billions in Arctic infrastructure. Greenland is still moving toward independence. The Northern Sea route is still opening. Shipping traffic through previously frozen waters increased 300% in less than a decade. Trump saw all of this coming. He saw the capability gap. He saw the economic competition. He saw the timeline. And he tried to force a conversation that the foreign policy establishment wanted to have quietly over the next 20 years. He wanted it now, loudly, publicly, with a transaction that would solve the problem permanently. The method was terrible. The execution was a disaster. The diplomatic fallout was significant. But the diagnosis was correct. The United States was losing strategic ground in the Arctic. Competitors were moving faster, and waiting wasn't an option. What Trump exposed wasn't just a policy gap, it was a communication gap, a massive disconnect between what intelligence officials knew and what the American public understood. Most people had no idea Greenland mattered. They didn't know Thule existed. They didn't know the Arctic was becoming the next great power competition zone. So when Trump brought it up, it sounded insane. But to the people reading the classified briefings, to the generals running Arctic war games, to the analysts tracking Russian and Chinese movements, it didn't sound insane. It sounded overdue. The only question was whether Trump's approach would help or hurt. And the answer was both. He helped by forcing the issue into public view. He hurt by making it easy to dismiss. But he was right about the fundamentals. Greenland is critical. The timeline is urgent. Competitors are ahead. And the United States needs a real strategy, not just hope. Trump's Greenland proposal will be remembered as a diplomatic embarrassment. But it should also be remembered as the moment when Arctic strategy stopped being a niche concern for policy experts and became something the public actually heard about. The moment when someone said out loud what everyone in the Pentagon already knew, that Greenland matters, that we're losing it, and that laughing about it won't change the reality. Trump was right about Greenland. Not about how to handle it, but about why it matters. And whether people want to admit it or not, the policies that followed prove it.